The morning sky was heavy with gray clouds, threatening rain but never quite delivering it. Rachel stood beside the freshly dug grave, her black dress whipping slightly in the October wind. She felt like she was watching herself from somewhere far away, like this was happening to someone else. But it wasn't. This was her life now. Her husband of 12 years was being lowered into the ground and she couldn't even cry anymore. People kept coming up to her, touching her arm, saying things that all blended together. He was a good man. If you need anything. Time heals all wounds. Rachel nodded at each one, her face frozen in a polite mask. She'd been doing this for 3 days now, ever since Thomas collapsed at the hardware store and never woke up. Heart attack, they said, just 45 years old. Gone in an instant. The small Montana town had turned out in force. Thomas had been born here, knew everyone. Rachel had moved here when they married, leaving behind her city life for his dream of small-town living. She'd adapted, made friends, became a teacher at the local elementary school. But standing here now, she felt like an outsider again. A widow at 38. The word felt strange and heavy. As the pastor droned on about eternal rest and God's plan, Rachel's eyes drifted across the gathered crowd. That's when she saw him, standing at the very back apart from everyone else, Daniel Cooper. Her breath caught slightly, the first real feeling she'd had in days. He looked different, older of course. They all were. But he'd grown into himself in a way that made her chest tighten. Tall and lean, with sun-weathered skin and lines around his eyes that hadn't been there 20 years ago. He held his cowboy hat in both hands, his dark hair slightly mussed. Even from this distance, she could see he was looking right at her. Rachel quickly looked away, focusing on the casket. She hadn't seen Daniel up close in years, though she knew he still lived nearby. He ran the Cooper Ranch now, one of the biggest in the county. She'd see his truck around town sometimes or hear people mention him, but they'd kept their distance. It was the unspoken rule they'd both followed since she married Thomas. The service ended. People started moving toward her again for one final round of condolences before heading to the church basement for lunch. Rachel steeled herself, but her eyes kept searching the crowd. Was he still there? Would he come talk to her? Then suddenly he was in front of her. Up close, she could see the silver threading through his hair at the temples. His eyes were the same, though. That deep brown that had always reminded her of warm coffee. "Rachel," he said quietly. His voice was deeper than she remembered. "I'm real sorry for your loss." "Thank you for coming, Daniel." Her voice sounded strange to her own ears, formal, like they were strangers. But they weren't strangers. They'd been everything to each other once. High school sweethearts who everyone said would get married. They'd made plans, dreamed together under the Montana stars. And then Rachel had broken his heart, chosen Thomas instead, chosen security over passion, chosen the steady insurance agent over the struggling ranch hand with nothing but dreams. "If you need anything," Daniel said. And for a moment his careful mask slipped. She saw something in his eyes that made her heart hurt. "Anything at all. You know where to find me." Before she could respond, Thomas's sister Linda swooped in, pulling Rachel into a suffocating hug and effectively dismissing Daniel. When Rachel looked up again, he was walking away, hat back on his head, shoulders straight. She watched him go, feeling something shift inside her chest, something that felt dangerously like regret. The church basement was stuffy and too warm, long tables covered with casseroles and desserts that well-meaning neighbors had brought. Rachel picked at a plate of food she couldn't taste, nodding through conversations she wouldn't remember. Her mother sat beside her, elderly and confused by the day's events. Alzheimer's was slowly stealing her away, and sometimes Rachel wasn't sure her mother even understood that Thomas was gone. "That Cooper boy was at the service," her mother said suddenly, one of her brief moments of clarity. "I always liked him. You should have married him instead." "Mom," Rachel said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one heard. "What? I'm old. I can say what I want." Her mother patted her hand. "Thomas was fine, steady, but steady isn't the same as happy, sweetheart." Rachel felt tears prick her eyes for the first time that day. Leave it to her mother, even half lost in her own mind, to cut right to the truth. Thomas had been steady, reliable, a good provider. But had she been happy? She'd been content, comfortable. That was different, wasn't it? The afternoon dragged on. Finally, mercifully, it was acceptable to leave. Rachel drove home with her mother, to the small house on the edge of town that now felt too empty and too full all at once. Thomas's things were everywhere. His jacket on the hook by the door, his coffee mug in the sink, his reading glasses on the side table. That night, Rachel lay awake in bed staring at the ceiling. The house made settling noises around her. In the distance, she could hear coyotes calling to each other. Thomas had always hated that sound. But Rachel had grown up in the country before her family moved to the city. She found it comforting somehow. A reminder that life went on regardless of human grief. She thought about Daniel standing at the back of the funeral. Why had he come? Out of respect? Or something more? They hadn't been close in years. After she married Thomas, Daniel had kept away. She'd see him at a distance sometimes, at the feed store or driving past. They'd nod politely, nothing more. It was easier that way, safer, but she'd always been aware of him. Always known exactly where he was in a room, even when she pretended not to notice. She'd heard through town gossip that he'd never married, built up his family's ranch into something impressive, took care of his aging parents. Women were interested, but Daniel Cooper apparently wasn't. Rachel rolled over, punching her pillow. This was ridiculous. Her husband was barely in the ground, and she was lying here thinking about her high school boyfriend. What was wrong with her? But as she finally drifted off to sleep, her last thought was of Daniel's eyes meeting hers across the cemetery. The way he'd looked at her, like no time had passed at all. Like she was still the 18-year-old girl he'd loved with everything he had. And the scariest part? Some small hidden piece of her heart had responded, had remembered what it felt like to be loved like that. Completely, desperately, without reservation. Rachel's last conscious thought was a whisper to herself in the darkness. "I'm sorry, Thomas," but she wasn't entirely sure what she was apologizing for. 2 weeks after the funeral, Rachel sat at her kitchen table surrounded by papers. Bills, bank statements, letters with red warnings stamped across the top. Her hands shook as she added up the numbers for the third time, hoping somehow she'd made a mistake. But the total remained the same, impossible. Crushing. Thomas had left her drowning in debt. $73,000. That's what he owed. To credit cards, to the bank, to people she'd never even heard of. And that wasn't counting the mortgage on their house, which was 3 months behind. How had she not known? How had he hidden this from her? Rachel pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to hold back tears. She'd gone through their accounts, trying to understand. Thomas had handled all their finances. He'd said it was his job as the man of the house, and Rachel had been happy to let him. She'd trusted him completely. Now she understood why he'd been so stressed the last year. The headaches, the late nights, the way he'd snap at small things. She'd thought it was just work pressure. Never imagined this. The gambling debts were the worst. Apparently Thomas had been going to casinos 3 towns over. Online betting, too. Chasing losses, the letter from the casino said. They were very sorry for her loss, but the debt remained. Could she set up a payment plan? Rachel's teacher salary was decent for their small town. $42,000 a year. It had always been enough when combined with Thomas's income. But alone, with these debts? The bank had already sent foreclosure warnings. She had 60 days to catch up on the mortgage or they'd take the house. "Sweetheart, is there any coffee?" Her mother shuffled into the kitchen, wrapped in her bathrobe though it was nearly noon. Margaret had good days and bad days. Today seemed to be somewhere in between. "I'll make some, Mom." Rachel quickly gathered up the papers, not wanting her mother to see. Margaret got confused easily, and stress made it worse. As she measured out coffee grounds, Rachel tried to think. She could sell the house, but that would take months and they'd lose money given the market. She could take a second job, but who would watch her mother? The assisted living facility would cost more than she could possibly afford. Her phone buzzed. Another creditor. Rachel declined the call. They'd been constant lately. She'd stopped answering days ago. The coffee maker gurgled and filled the kitchen with a familiar smell. Normal. Everything looked normal from the outside, but Rachel felt like she was standing on the edge of a cliff about to fall. A knock at the door made her jump. Through the window, she could see a truck in the driveway. Daniel's truck. Her heart did something complicated in her chest. She thought about not answering. She looked terrible. Hadn't washed her hair in 3 days. Was wearing old sweatpants. But the knock came again, gentle but persistent. Rachel opened the door. Daniel stood on her porch and she noticed immediately that he'd fixed the loose board on the steps. When had he done that? "Morning," he said, touching the brim of his hat. "Hope I'm not disturbing you." "No, it's—" "What are you doing here, Daniel?" He shifted his weight, looking almost nervous. "I noticed your fence is about to fall down, and that oak branch hanging over your roof is going to be trouble in the next storm. Thought I'd come by and fix things up if that's all right." Rachel blinked. "You don't have to do that." "I know I don't have to. I want to." His eyes met hers, and there was something gentle there that made her throat tight. "Let me help, Rachel." She wanted to say no, wanted to keep her pride intact. But she was so tired, so overwhelmed. And the fence really was falling down. "Okay," she whispered. "Thank you, Daniel worked all afternoon." Rachel watched from the kitchen window as he repaired the fence, cut down the dangerous branch, fixed her broken gutter. He moved with easy confidence, like physical work was as natural as breathing, which it probably was, running a ranch. When he finished, Rachel brought him lemonade on the porch. He drank it gratefully, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I left some firewood by the shed too," he said. "Winter's coming early this year. I can feel it. Daniel, I can't pay you for all this. Did I ask you to?" He said it gently, no judgment in his voice. Rachel looked away, blinking back tears. "People are going to talk. Let them talk. They're going to anyway." He set down the glass. "Rachel, I know it's not easy. Losing someone. Getting through it. If you need anything else, you just ask. Okay?" She nodded, not trusting her voice. Daniel climbed back in his truck and drove away, leaving Rachel standing on her newly repaired porch, feeling grateful and confused and something else she didn't want to name. The next week was worse. Rachel spent her lunch breaks calling creditors, trying to negotiate. Most were sympathetic but firm. They needed payment. She looked into second mortgages, but her credit was shot from Thomas's debts. Personal loans were out of the question. By Thursday, Rachel had accepted the inevitable. She'd have to declare bankruptcy. Lose the house. She and her mother would need to find an apartment, though even that seemed impossible on her salary. Friday after school, Rachel stopped at the general store for groceries, or tried to. She'd carefully selected only essentials, counting every dollar. But when the cashier rang everything up, Rachel's card declined. She tried another card. Declined. The cash in her wallet wasn't enough. "I'm sorry," Rachel said, her face burning. I'll put some things back." People were lined up behind her. She could feel their stares, hear the whispers. Poor thing. Thomas left her with nothing. "How embarrassing. Hold on," a deep voice said behind her. Daniel stepped forward, pulling out his wallet. "I'll get this." "No," Rachel said quickly. "Daniel, no. I can't." "You can and you will." He handed his card to the cashier before Rachel could protest further. "Ring it all up." Rachel stood frozen as he paid for her groceries. $43.16. She knew the exact amount, knew she'd never forget this moment. The kindness and the humiliation of it. Outside, Daniel loaded the bags into her car while Rachel stood there, unable to look at him. "Rachel," he said gently, "I'll pay you back. I don't want you to pay me back." "Well, I will anyway." Tears were streaming down her face now, and she couldn't stop them. I can't keep accepting charity from you. From anyone. I have to figure this out on my own." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "There's no shame in needing help. We all need it sometimes. You don't," Rachel said bitterly. "You have your successful ranch and your perfect life, and I'm standing here unable to afford groceries." "My perfect life?" Daniel actually laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Rachel, I've spent 20 years building something I don't even want because the only person I ever wanted to build a life with chose someone else. So trust me when I say nobody's life is perfect." Rachel finally looked up at him. Really looked. Saw the loneliness in his eyes. The longing. The same thing she'd been ignoring in herself for years. "I should go," she whispered. "Yeah." Daniel stepped back. "But Rachel? I mean what I said. If you need help, real help, you come find me. Promise me that." She nodded, got in her car, and drove away. But his words stayed with her. And late that night, staring at the impossible pile of bills, Rachel wondered if maybe, just maybe, it was time to stop being proud and start being practical, even if it meant accepting help from the one man who'd never stopped caring about her. Rachel was washing dishes when she heard the truck in the driveway. Evening had settled over the Montana landscape, painting everything in shades of gold and purple. Through the window, she watched Daniel climb out and walk toward her porch with that steady, purposeful stride of his. Her heart hammered. She hadn't seen him since the grocery store incident a week ago. Hadn't called like he'd asked her to. She was too embarrassed, too proud, too everything. The knock came. Rachel dried her hands and opened the door. "Evening," Daniel said. "Got a minute to talk?" "I suppose so." Rachel stepped aside to let him in. "Mom's already asleep. She tires early these days." Daniel took off his hat and held it in his hands, a gesture Rachel was learning meant he was nervous. Strange to see this confident rancher nervous about anything. They sat at her kitchen table, the same table covered in bills just days ago. Rachel had cleared it all away, hidden the evidence of her financial disaster in drawers and folders. "I'm going to say something," Daniel started, "and I need you to hear me out before you say no." Rachel's stomach dropped. "Okay, I need help at the ranch," he said it straight out, looking her in the eye. "My father had a stroke 2 months ago. He's recovering, but he needs care, physical therapy, help with daily tasks. The house is a mess because I'm out working dawn to dusk. I can't keep up with everything." "I'm sorry about your father," Rachel said carefully. "I didn't know, and we kept it quiet. He's proud, doesn't want people fussing." Daniel turned his hat in his hands. "Here's what I'm proposing. You and your mother move into the ranch house. The place is big enough that you'd have your own space. You help take care of my dad, manage the household. In return, I pay off your debts and give you a salary on top of that." Rachel stared at him. "What?" "I know about the debts," Daniel said quietly. "Small town. Word gets around. The bank manager's wife talks to everyone. I know you're about to lose this house." Shame washed over Rachel like cold water. "So this is charity?" "No, it's a job offer." Daniel leaned forward. "Rachel, I genuinely need help. I've been trying to hire someone for months, but everyone in this county either can't handle Dad's stubbornness, or I don't trust them in my home. You're a teacher. You're patient. You're good with people, and your mom would be safe and cared for. It makes sense." "It makes sense?" Rachel's voice rose. "Daniel, we have history. People already talk about you helping me. If I move into your house, let them talk." His jaw set in that stubborn way she remembered from when they were kids. "I don't care what people say. I care about solving a problem that happens to benefit both of us." Rachel stood up, pacing to the window. Outside, the last light was fading. Her mind raced through everything. The foreclosure notice, the collection calls, her mother's confusion getting worse, the impossibility of finding an affordable place that would accept them both. "What's the catch?" she asked without turning around. "No catch." "There's always a catch, Daniel. What do you really want from me?" Silence. Then his voice, rough and honest. "I want you to be safe. I want you to not worry yourself sick over money. He stopped, then continued. "I want what I've always wanted. But I'm not going to push you. This is a business arrangement, Rachel. Nothing more unless you decide otherwise." She turned to face him. "Unless I decide otherwise?" Daniel stood, meeting her eyes. "I've never stopped caring about you. You know that. You've always known that. But I'm not Thomas. I'm not going to hide things or play games. I'm laying it all out straight. I have feelings for you. I probably always will. But if all you want is a safe place to live and a job, then that's what this is. Your choice. Always your choice." Rachel's hands trembled. "You're asking me to live in the house where we almost got engaged, where we planned our whole future together. I know. You're asking me to accept help from the man whose heart I broke. I know that too. Why?" The word came out as a whisper. "After everything, why would you do this?" Daniel moved closer but didn't touch her. "Because when you love someone, really love them, you want them to be okay. Even if they're not with you. Even if they chose someone else. Even if it kills you a little bit every day." He paused. "Because I'd rather have you in my house as an employee than know you're out there struggling and I did nothing." Tears spilled down Rachel's cheeks. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it. That's all I'm asking." Daniel placed a business card on the table. "My lawyer drew up a contract. It's all official. Salary, benefits, duties, everything spelled out clear. No tricks, you read it, and if you're interested, you call me. If not, I'll respect that and we'll figure out something else to help you." "Something else?" "Rachel, one way or another, I'm not letting you lose everything. Even if you turn down this job, we'll find a solution. I promise you that." After Daniel left, Rachel sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. She picked up the business card. turned it over in her hands. Her mind played out two futures. One where she refused, declared bankruptcy, moved into a tiny apartment with her mother, worked 2 jobs just to survive. The other where she swallowed her pride, accepted this offer, lived in the house she'd once dreamed would be hers anyway. That night, she couldn't sleep. She got up and pulled out the old shoebox from the top of her closet. Inside were photos from high school. Her and Daniel at prom, at the lake, in his truck. So young, so sure they'd be together forever. She'd convinced herself she made the right choice back then. Thomas was stable, established, safe. Daniel had nothing but dreams of building up his family's failing ranch. Everyone told her she'd be crazy to choose him. Her parents, her friends, even her teachers. Be practical, they said. Love doesn't pay the bills, so she'd been practical. Broken Daniel's heart and her own in the process. Married Thomas and built a comfortable, safe, boring life. And look where practical had gotten her. The next morning, Rachel called the number on the card. Daniel answered on the second ring. "I want to see the contract," she said. "And I want to meet your father before I decide anything. If we're going to do this, it needs to work for everyone." Of course. She could hear the relief in his voice. "When do you want to come by?" "Tomorrow. After school. I'll have lunch ready." Rachel hung up and looked at her mother, who was eating oatmeal at the table. Margaret smiled at her. "You're going to see that Cooper boy, aren't you? How did you—" "I remember more than you think." Her mother reached over and patted her hand. "He's a good man. Always has been. Maybe it's time you stopped running from that." Rachel squeezed her mother's hand. "I'm scared, Mom." "Of course you are. But sometimes the scariest thing is also the rightest thing." Margaret went back to her oatmeal, humming softly. Rachel spent the rest of the day terrified and hopeful in equal measure. She was about to step into the life she'd once run away from, with the man she'd never stopped loving even when she was married to someone else. It felt like standing on a cliff edge about to jump. The question was whether she'd fall or fly. The Cooper Ranch looked exactly as Rachel remembered, and that made everything harder. The long gravel driveway lined with fence posts, the sprawling main house with its wide porch, the red barn in the distance where she and Daniel had shared their first kiss 20 years ago. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel. This was a mistake. She should turn around right now, but she didn't. She parked in front of the house and sat there for a moment, gathering courage. Through the window, she could see Daniel appear on the porch. He'd been watching for her. "You came," he said as she climbed out. He sounded genuinely relieved, like he'd thought she might change her mind. "I said I would." Rachel grabbed her purse. "Is your father awake?" "Yeah, and fair warning. He's gonna say whatever comes into his head." "The stroke affected his filter," the doctor says. Daniel held open the front door. Or maybe he just stopped caring about being polite. Hard to tell with Dad. The inside of the house was clean but cluttered. Ranch magazines on every surface. Coffee mugs that hadn't made it to the kitchen. A man's jacket thrown over a chair. This was a house where working men lived, without a woman's touch to organize things. "Rachel!" A booming voice came from the living room. "Is that really you?" Girl Charlie Cooper sat in a recliner, a walker beside him. He'd aged considerably, but his eyes were still sharp and bright. He'd always liked Rachel, she remembered. Had been disappointed when she didn't marry his son. "Hello, Mr. Cooper." Rachel moved closer. "I heard you've been under the weather." "Under the weather." Charlie snorted. "That's a polite way of saying half my body stopped working. But I'm getting better. Stubborn as a mule, the doctors say." He studied her with those sharp eyes. "Heard you lost your husband. Sorry about that." "Thank you. Also heard he left you in a financial mess, which is why you're here." Charlie didn't sugarcoat anything. "My boy wants to hire you to take care of this old man and keep house. That about right?" Rachel glanced at Daniel, who just shrugged. Apparently his father really did say whatever he thought. "That's right," Rachel said. "Good. I like you. Always have. You broke Danny's heart into a million pieces, but I still like you." Charlie shifted in his chair. "Question is, you gonna break it again? Because if you are, better to say no now and leave him be." "Dad," Daniel said, a warning in his voice, "I'm just asking what needs asking." Charlie looked between them. You two have history. Everyone knows it. If she comes here and he gets his hopes up and she runs off again, that's gonna hurt worse than the first time. Rachel felt her face flush. Mr. Cooper, this is a job arrangement, nothing more. If you say so. Charlie didn't sound convinced. But let me tell you something, girl. My son has spent 20 years building this ranch into something real. He did it alone because he couldn't have the one thing he actually wanted. Now here you are, back in his life. So you think hard about what you're doing. Real hard. The room fell silent. Rachel didn't know what to say. The old man's words cut right to the heart of her own fears. I appreciate your honesty, she finally said, and I promise I won't hurt him. That's not why I'm here. Charlie studied her a moment longer, then nodded. All right then. Let's talk about what I need. I can walk a little with the walker, but I need help with showers, getting dressed sometimes, physical therapy exercises twice a day, and I need someone to make sure I eat proper food, not just sandwiches and whatever Danny throws together. They spent an hour going over details. Charlie's medication schedule, his therapy routine, his doctor appointments. It was a lot, but nothing Rachel couldn't handle. She'd taken care of her mother for years as the Alzheimer's progressed. She knew about patients and routines. So? Daniel asked after lunch, walking her back to her car. What do you think? Your father is direct. That's one word for it. Daniel smiled slightly. He's worried about me. Has been for years. Thinks I'm lonely. Are you? The question slipped out before Rachel could stop it. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Yeah, I am. But that's not why I'm offering you this job. I really do need help and you really do need a solution. Everything else is just complication we don't have to deal with if you don't want to. Rachel pulled the contract from her purse. She'd read it 3 times last night. It was fair, generous even. More money than she expected, healthcare included, a suite of rooms for her and her mother in the east wing of the house, completely private. I'll take the job, she said. But I need you to understand something. I'm doing this because I'm out of options, not because you have feelings for me. I know. Daniel's face was carefully neutral. I'm not expecting anything from you except good work and honesty. That's all. Okay then. Rachel held out her hand to shake on it. When do you want us to move in? Daniel shook her hand, his grip warm and strong. Whenever you're ready. This weekend? That fast? No point dragging it out. The bank's breathing down your neck and I need help now. Unless you need more time? Rachel thought about her house, about packing up a life that had fallen apart. Maybe fast was better, like ripping off a bandage. This weekend, she agreed. Moving day came too quickly. Rachel hadn't realized how much stuff she'd accumulated in 12 years until she had to pack it all. Daniel showed up Saturday morning with his truck and 2 ranch hands to help. He was efficient and kind, directing the men without taking over, letting Rachel decide what went where. Her neighbors watched from windows and porches. Mrs. Chen from next door actually came over, curiosity barely disguised as concern. You're really moving to the Cooper Ranch? She asked, watching the men load furniture. Yes, I'm taking a position there as a household manager. Rachel kept her voice professional. I see. Mrs. Chen's eyebrows rose. That's quite convenient, isn't it? Daniel Cooper just happens to have a job available right when you need one. Life works out sometimes. Rachel refused to be baited. Or maybe he's been waiting for this chance. Mrs. Chen lowered her voice. Everyone knows he never got over you. Now your husband's barely cold and you're moving into his house. Don't you think that's a bit fast? Rachel felt her temper flare. Mrs. Chen, I appreciate your concern, but what I do is my business. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. She turned away before the woman could respond, but the words stung. Was that what everyone would think? That she was taking advantage of Daniel's feelings, that she'd moved on from Thomas too quickly? Hey, Daniel appeared at her elbow carrying a box. Don't listen to people like her, they're bored and looking for drama. But she's right. People are going to talk. Let them. Daniel set down the box. Rachel, You're doing what you need to do to survive and take care of your mother. There's no shame in that. Anyone who says different isn't worth worrying about. By afternoon, everything was loaded. Rachel took one last walk through her empty house. It had never really felt like home, she realized. She'd always felt like a guest in Thomas's space. Maybe that should have told her something years ago. The ranch house was overwhelming at first. So much space. Her and her mother's rooms were in the east wing, just like Daniel promised. A bedroom for each of them, a shared sitting area, and their own bathroom. It was bigger than her entire previous house. This is too much, Rachel said as Daniel set down the last box. It's what was available. This wing hasn't been used in years. Might as well get some use out of it. He paused at the door. Take your time settling in. Dinner's at 6 if you want to join us, but no pressure. You can eat in here if you prefer. Daniel. Rachel stopped him. Thank you, really. I know this is complicated, but I'm grateful. Something flickered in his eyes. Hope, maybe. Or sadness. You're welcome. And Rachel, this is your home now. Not a hotel, not a temporary stop, your home. Try to feel comfortable here. After he left, Rachel sank onto the bed. Her mother was already unpacking, humming happily. Margaret seemed delighted with the move, like it was an adventure. This is a nice room, her mother said. That Daniel is such a good boy, you should marry him. Mom, we've talked about this. I just lost Thomas. Thomas. Margaret frowned, trying to remember. Oh yes, he wasn't right for you anyway. Always knew it. You should have married the cowboy the first time. Rachel didn't have the energy to argue. Besides, a small traitorous part of her whispered that maybe her mother was right. Maybe she should have married Daniel the first time. Maybe this whole mess could have been avoided. But that night, lying in a strange bed in a house full of memories, Rachel made herself a promise. She would do this job well. She would pay off her debts. She would take care of her mother and Charlie. And she would keep her heart locked up, tight, because letting herself fall for Daniel Cooper again would be the most dangerous thing she could possibly do, even if part of her wondered if she'd ever really stopped loving him in the first place. 3 weeks into living at the Cooper Ranch, Rachel had fallen into a comfortable routine. Up at 6 to help Charlie with his morning exercises. Breakfast for the 3 of them, Daniel usually rushing through his meal to get out to the horses. Then her mother's medication, Charlie's physical therapy, household tasks that kept her busy until she had to leave for school. It worked. That was the surprising thing. It actually worked. Charlie was a tough patient, but a fair one. He grumbled about the exercises, but did them. He complained about the healthy meals Rachel cooked, but ate every bite. And slowly, she could see him getting stronger. The walker was getting less use. His words came easier. Her mother was thriving too. Margaret loved sitting on the porch watching the ranch activities. The routine and security seemed to calm her confusion. She had more good days than bad ones now. And Daniel kept his distance just like he'd promised. He was polite, friendly even, but careful. He never lingered too long in conversations. Never touched her except by accident. Never looked at her the way she caught him looking sometimes when he thought she wasn't paying attention. Rachel told herself she was grateful for the boundaries. This was a job, a business arrangement, nothing more. So why did she feel disappointed every time he left a room? Spring arrived slowly, then all at once. The Montana landscape transformed from brown to green almost overnight. Wildflowers dotted the fields. The ranch came alive with activity as calving season hit full force. Rachel found herself drawn to the windows watching Daniel work. He was in his element out there, confident and capable in a way that made her chest ache. She'd forgotten how good he was with animals. Patient and gentle, never forcing anything. You're staring again, Charlie said from his chair, making Rachel jump. I'm not staring. I'm just looking out the window. Mm-hmm. Charlie's eyes twinkled with amusement. Been doing a lot of that looking lately. Rachel felt her face heat. I should start lunch. Rachel. Charlie's voice stopped her. You know it's okay, right? To have feelings. You're not betraying anyone. I don't have feelings, Rachel said automatically. Right. And I'm 25 and training for the Olympics. Charlie shook his head. Girl, I've been watching you two dance around each other for weeks. You're both being so careful, so polite. It's exhausting to watch. Mr. Cooper, Charlie, how many times do I have to tell you to call me Charlie? He shifted in his chair. Look, I know you're worried about what people think, about moving too fast. But here's what I learned having a stroke. Life's too short for being careful all the time. Sometimes you gotta just go for it. Rachel didn't know what to say to that. She escaped to the kitchen, Charlie's words following her. That afternoon, she made lunches for the ranch hands. It was something she'd started doing without being asked, and Daniel had seemed grateful. She packed sandwiches, fruit, cookies she'd baked that morning. Then she drove the basket out to the south pasture where the men were working. Daniel saw her coming and walked over, wiping sweat from his forehead. He'd pushed his hat back and his shirt was dusty from work. He looked good. Too good. You didn't have to do this, he said, but he was smiling. I know, but everyone has to eat. Rachel handed him the basket. There's enough for all 5 of you. You're spoiling us. Daniel called the other men over. They descended on the food like hungry wolves, grateful and loud in their appreciation. Rachel stood there feeling suddenly awkward. She should leave. Get back to the house. But she found herself lingering, watching them work. Want to see something? Daniel asked after the men went back to their tasks. I should get back. It'll just take a minute. Come on. Against her better judgment, Rachel followed him to the corral. Inside was a mare with a brand new foal, maybe a day old. The little one was all legs and ears, staying close to its mother. She had him last night, Daniel said quietly. Thought you might want to see. Rachel leaned on the fence, enchanted. The foal was perfect, already trying to run on those wobbly legs. He's beautiful. Yeah. But when Rachel glanced over, Daniel was looking at her, not the horse. Their eyes met and something electric passed between them. The air felt suddenly thick. Daniel, Rachel whispered, I know. I'm sorry. He looked away quickly. I'm trying to keep my distance like I promised. But it's hard sometimes. Why? She shouldn't ask. Shouldn't push. But the question came out anyway. Why? Daniel laughed, but there was no humor in it. Rachel, do you have any idea what it's like having you here? Seeing you every day? Having you in my house, taking care of my dad? Making it feel like a home for the first time in forever? And knowing I can't... He stopped, shaking his head. Never mind. Forget I said anything. No. Rachel's heart was pounding. Tell me, you can't what? Daniel turned to face her fully. I can't hold you. Can't tell you how I feel every single second of every day. Can't kiss you like I've wanted to since the moment you walked back into my life. His voice was rough with emotion. Because you made it clear this is just a job. And I'm respecting that. But it's killing me, Rachel. It's killing me to be this close and not be able to tell you that I love you, that I've always loved you, that I never stopped. Rachel couldn't breathe. She should step back, remind him of boundaries, keep things professional. Instead, she heard herself say, I think about that night, the night I broke up with you. I think about it all the time. Don't. Daniel's jaw clenched. Don't do this unless you mean it. What if I mean it? The words tumbled out before she could stop them. What if I think I made the biggest mistake of my life 20 years ago? What if being here, seeing you, remembering us, what if it's making me realize I chose wrong? Daniel went very still. You don't mean that. You're grieving, you're vulnerable. I'm not that vulnerable. Rachel moved closer. And maybe I am grieving, but not the way you think. I'm grieving all the years I wasted being practical and safe. All the time I spent with the wrong person because I was too scared to take a chance on the right one. Rachel, her name was a warning and a prayer all at once. I see you with the horses, she continued, unable to stop now that she'd started. Patient and gentle and strong. I see you with your father, taking care of him even though it's hard. I see the man you've become, and Daniel, you're everything I always knew you would be. Everything I was too afraid to believe in. Stop. Daniel's hands clenched at his sides. You can't say these things. Not unless you're sure, because if you're not sure if you're going to change your mind again, I hurt you. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. I know I did. And I'm so sorry. I've been sorry for 20 years, then why? The question burst out of him. Why did you choose him? Was I really that easy to walk away from? No. Rachel was crying now. You were so hard to walk away from that I've spent every day since wondering if I made the right choice. Thomas was safe. Everyone approved. It made sense. But you were everything that scared me. All that passion and possibility and risk. I was 18 and terrified, and I chose wrong. They stood there in the spring sunlight, years of unspoken words hanging between them. Around them, the ranch continued its work, but in this moment it was just the two of them, and everything they'd never said. "I can't do this right now," Daniel finally said, his voice strained. "I have to get back to work. The men are waiting." "Daniel, no, Rachel. You don't get to do this. You don't get to come back into my life, say these things, and expect me to just... I need time to think, to figure out if this is real or if you're just confused." He walked away, leaving Rachel standing by the corral alone. The foal and its mother watched her with curious eyes. That night, Rachel couldn't sleep. She kept replaying the conversation, cringing at her words. She'd promised herself she'd keep things professional, and what had she done? Confessed her feelings like some lovesick teenager, but they were true. That was the terrifying part. Every word had been true. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen for tea. She was surprised to find Daniel already there, sitting in the dark at the table. "Can't sleep either?" she asked quietly. "No." He didn't look at her. "Been thinking about what you said." Rachel's heart hammered. And I don't know what to do with it." Daniel finally met her eyes. "I want to believe you. God, I want to believe you so badly it hurts. But Rachel, you broke my heart once. Completely shattered it. It took me years to put myself back together. And now you're telling me you made a mistake, that you have feelings, but how do I know you won't change your mind again?" "You don't," Rachel admitted. "I can't promise the future. Nobody can. But I can promise I'm not playing games. These feelings are real and they're terrifying, and I don't know what to do with them either." Daniel stood up, moved closer. "What do you want from me?" "I don't know." Rachel's voice shook. "Time, maybe. Time to figure out if what I'm feeling is real or just gratitude and nostalgia and grief all mixed up together." "Time." Daniel nodded slowly. "I can give you time. But Rachel, I need you to understand something. If we do this, if we try this, I'm all in. I don't do casual. I never have. So you need to be sure. Really sure. Because I won't survive losing you twice." Rachel reached out, touched his hand. "I'll be sure. I promise." They stood there in the dark kitchen, hands touching, neither quite ready to let go or take the next step. Outside, a coyote called to the moon. The thud woke Rachel at 2 in the morning. She lay still for a moment, disoriented in the darkness, wondering if she'd dreamed it. Then she heard it again. A heavy sound from somewhere in the house, followed by a groan. She was out of bed and running before she fully processed what was happening. Down the hallway, her bare feet silent on the hardwood. The sound had come from Charlie's room. She found him on the floor beside his bed, his face twisted in pain. Can't breathe right," he gasped. "Hold on." Rachel's nursing instincts kicked in, years of caring for her mother taking over. She checked his pulse, rapid and irregular. His skin was clammy. "Charlie, I'm calling an ambulance, okay? Just stay still." "Daniel," Charlie managed. "Get Daniel." Rachel grabbed her phone, dialed with shaking hands. First the ambulance, giving clear directions to the ranch. Then she ran to Daniel's room, pounding on the door. He answered almost immediately, pulling on a shirt. One look at her face and he knew. "Dad?" On the floor. "Can't breathe properly. Ambulance is coming." Daniel was past her in a second, running to his father's room. Rachel followed, found him kneeling beside Charlie, holding the old man's hand. "Hey, Dad. Hey, you're gonna be okay. Help is coming." Daniel's voice was steady, but Rachel could see the fear in his eyes. "Don't fuss," Charlie wheezed. "I'm fine. You're on the floor having trouble breathing." "That's not fine." Daniel looked up at Rachel. "How long for the ambulance?" 15 minutes. Maybe 20. Rural Montana meant everything was far away, including emergency services. That's too long. Daniel made a decision. "We're taking him ourselves." Rachel grabbed blankets. "I'll get the truck." They moved fast, working together without needing words. Rachel got Charlie wrapped up while Daniel brought the truck right to the porch. Together, they got the old man into the back seat, Rachel climbing in beside him to monitor his breathing. The drive to the hospital was the longest 40 minutes of Rachel's life. She held Charlie's hand, talked to him constantly to keep him conscious. Behind the wheel, Daniel drove faster than was probably safe, but Rachel didn't say anything. She watched the speedometer climb and prayed they'd make it in time. "You're good girl," Charlie said at one point, his words slurred. "Take care of my boy." "You're going to be fine," Rachel insisted. "You hear me? You're going to be fine because you're too stubborn to be anything else." Charlie managed a weak smile. Stubborn. Runs in the family. They pulled up to the emergency room entrance and everything became a blur. Doctors and nurses swarming. Charlie being rushed away on a gurney. Forms to fill out. Questions to answer. Rachel and Daniel stood in the bright, harsh lights of the waiting room. Both of them still in pajamas and coats thrown on top. I should call his doctor, Daniel said, pulling out his phone. His hands were shaking. I'll get coffee, Rachel said, needing something to do. The waiting room coffee was terrible, but they drank it anyway. Daniel made his calls, spoke to the night nurse, tried to get information. Rachel sat beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Hours passed. Dawn crept through the windows. Other people came and went, their own emergencies playing out. Rachel and Daniel stayed, waiting for news. I knew this could happen, Daniel said at some point, staring at his coffee. Doctor said another stroke was possible. But I thought we had more time. Don't think like that. Rachel touched his arm. We got him here. He's getting help. Because of you. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her. You heard him fall. You knew what to do. If you hadn't been there, but I was there. Rachel squeezed his arm. That's what matters. Around 6 in the morning, a doctor finally appeared. Rachel watched Daniel stand up, his whole body tense. Mr. Cooper, your father is stable. It was a minor stroke, caught early. He's going to need intensive therapy and there's some additional damage, but he's going to recover. The relief that washed over Daniel's face made Rachel's chest ache. Can I see him? Soon. He's sleeping now. We'll come get you when he wakes up. After the doctor left, Daniel sank back into his chair. He put his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. Rachel realized he was crying. This strong, capable man finally letting himself fall apart. She didn't think. She just moved, wrapping her arms around him, pulling him close. Daniel turned into her embrace, his face buried in her shoulder, and cried like his heart was breaking. I almost lost him, he said, his voice muffled. I almost lost him, and I've been so focused on the ranch, on work, on everything else. What if I'd lost him without telling him? Shh. Rachel held him tighter. He's okay. He's going to be okay. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other in the harsh fluorescent lights. Rachel stroked his hair, whispered comfort, let him break down in a way he probably hadn't let himself do in years. Finally, Daniel pulled back, wiping his eyes. Sorry, I don't apologize. Rachel cupped his face in her hands. You don't have to be strong every second. Not with me. He looked at her and something shifted. All the careful distance they'd been maintaining evaporated. Daniel reached up, covered her hands with his. I need to tell you something, he said. And I'm telling you now because I almost didn't get the chance to tell Dad. And I'm not making that mistake twice. Daniel, I bought your husband's debts from the bank. The words tumbled out fast. Not just agreed to pay them off. I bought them. 6 months ago before he died. The bank was going to foreclose and I heard about it and I bought the debt. All of it. Rachel stared at him. What? I was going to forgive it all. Tell the bank to leave you alone. But then Thomas died. And you were so proud, so determined to handle things yourself. I couldn't figure out how to help without you knowing. So I came up with a job offer. Daniel took a shaky breath. I'm sorry I didn't tell you. I'm sorry I manipulated things. But I couldn't just stand by and watch you lose everything. You... Rachel couldn't process it. You bought $73,000 in debt 6 months ago? Yeah, why would you do that? Because I love you. Daniel said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I've loved you since we were 16 years old. I loved you when you married someone else. I loved you when you disappeared from my life. I loved you when you came to Thomas's funeral looking so lost. I loved you every single day for 20 years, and I'll love you for the rest of my life whether you love me back or not. Tears streamed down Rachel's face. You should have told me. I know. I was going to, eventually, but I needed you to choose this. Choose me because you wanted to, not because you felt obligated. He brushed a tear from her cheek. I'm telling you now because life is too short for secrets. And because sitting in this hospital thinking about loss and time and chances, I realized I can't keep pretending this is just a job arrangement. Not anymore. Daniel. Rachel's voice shook. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. He started to pull away, but Rachel held on. Yes, I do. She took a breath. You asked me if I was sure about my feelings. If they were real or just confusion. I'm sure. Daniel, I'm sure. I've spent 3 weeks living in your house watching you work, seeing how you are with your father, with the animals, with me, and I'm sure. I love you. I think I never stopped. Rachel, I'm not done. She laughed through her tears. I'm terrified. Absolutely terrified. Because loving you means risking everything. It means being vulnerable in a way I haven't been in years. It means possibly getting hurt. But I'm done being safe. I'm done choosing the easy path. I want the messy, complicated, scary, real thing. I want you. Daniel pulled her close, rested his forehead against hers. You're sure? Because once we do this, I'm not letting you go again. I'm sure. He kissed her then, soft and gentle, like she was something precious. Rachel kissed him back, tasting salt from both their tears, feeling something inside her that had been locked away for years finally break open. When they pulled apart, Daniel was smiling. Actually smiling for the first time since they'd arrived at the hospital. Mr. Cooper, a nurse appeared. Your father is awake and asking for you both. They walked down the hospital corridor hand in hand. Charlie was propped up in bed looking tired but alert. His eyes went immediately to their joined hands, and a knowing smile spread across his face. About time, he said, his voice stronger already. Thought I was going to have another stroke just to get you two to figure it out. Dad, Daniel said, but he was laughing. Don't dad me. I'm an old man who just cheated death. I can say what I want. Charlie looked at Rachel. You going to marry him this time, girl? Or do I have to wait another 20 years? Rachel squeezed Daniel's hand and smiled. I'll marry him, just as soon as he asks properly. Daniel turned to her, eyes bright with tears and hope and love. Rachel, not here, she interrupted, laughing. Not in a hospital room at 6 in the morning when we're both exhausted and scared. Ask me when it's right, when it's ours. I'll wait. I've waited 20 years, Daniel said. I can wait a little longer. Charlie snorted. Young people. Always so dramatic. Now somebody get me some real food. Hospital food is terrible. As Rachel went to find a nurse, she felt Daniel's eyes following her. She looked back, found him watching her with such love and tenderness that it took her breath away. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Rachel wasn't afraid of the future. Rachel stood at Thomas's grave for the first time since the funeral. Spring had arrived fully now, and wildflowers dotted the cemetery grounds. She'd brought a small bouquet from the ranch garden, nothing fancy. Just some daisies and black-eyed Susans, hi, she said quietly, feeling foolish talking to a headstone. But she needed to do this. Needed to say things she'd never gotten the chance to say when he was alive. I'm sorry I wasn't what you needed. I'm sorry you felt like you had to hide things from me. The gambling, the debts, all of it. Maybe if we'd talked more, if we'd really been honest with each other. She trailed off, shook her head. No, that's not fair to either of us. We were both hiding, weren't we? You were hiding your problems, and I was hiding the fact that I never loved you the way I should have. The words hurt to say out loud, but they were true. She'd cared for Thomas, respected him, built a comfortable life with him, but that deep, consuming love, that had always belonged to someone else. I'm with Daniel now. Rachel placed the flowers against the headstone, or I'm going to be. And I need you to know that it's not because I didn't care about you. It's just that I married the wrong person 20 years ago, and I'm trying to fix that now. I hope wherever you are, you understand. I hope you find peace, and I hope you can forgive me for not being brave enough to be honest about what I really wanted. She stood there a while longer, letting the wind dry the tears on her face. This was goodbye. Real goodbye. Not the numb shock of the funeral, but a conscious choice to close that chapter and move forward. When she got back to the ranch, Daniel's sister Linda was waiting on the porch. Rachel's stomach dropped. She'd been dreading this conversation. Linda. Rachel climbed out of her car. I didn't know you were coming by. Clearly. Linda's expression was cold. I've been hearing interesting things around town, Rachel. About you and Daniel Cooper. Would you like to come inside? No, I don't think so. I don't want to be in the house where you're playing happy family with another man barely 3 months after my brother died. Rachel felt her face flush. Linda, it's not like that, isn't it? Linda's voice rose. You moved in here within weeks of Thomas's funeral. You're living with a man who everyone knows was in love with you, and now I hear you're together. You're actually together? Yes? Rachel lifted her chin. Yes, we're together. How dare you? Linda's eyes filled with angry tears. Thomas loved you. He worked himself to death trying to provide for you, trying to be enough for you. And this is how you honor his memory? By running to the man you should have married in the first place? The words hit hard because they were partially true. I'm sorry you're hurt. Hurt? Linda laughed bitterly. Rachel, you're making a mockery of my brother's memory. Everyone in town is talking about it. Poor Thomas, married to a woman who never really loved him, who was just biding her time until she could go back to her first choice. That's not true, isn't it? Linda stepped closer. You think I didn't notice over the years? The way you'd go quiet whenever someone mentioned Daniel? The way you'd find excuses not to go to town events where he might be? You were running from him your whole marriage, which means some part of you was always thinking about him. Rachel wanted to deny it, but she couldn't, because Linda was right. She had spent 12 years hyper-aware of Daniel's presence in her life even when they weren't speaking. I cared about Thomas, Rachel said quietly. I did, but you're right that I married him for the wrong reasons, and maybe if I'd been honest about that from the beginning, he wouldn't have spent years trying to be something he didn't need to be. So this is Thomas's fault now? No, it's mine. Rachel felt her own tears coming. It's my fault for not being brave enough to choose what I really wanted. It's my fault for settling for comfortable instead of real. But Linda, I can't change the past. All I can do is try to do better now. By dishonoring his memory, by being honest for once in my life. Rachel's voice rose. By admitting that I made mistakes and trying to fix them. Thomas is gone. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry he died so young, sorry about the debts, sorry about all of it. But I'm still here. I'm still alive. And I have a chance at real happiness, and I'm taking it. Linda stared at her for a long moment. You know what? You two deserve each other. Daniel Cooper, who never moved on, and you, who never really committed in the first place. Have a nice life together. She stormed off to her car, leaving Rachel shaking on the porch. Inside, she could hear her mother calling for her. Through the window, she saw Charlie in his recliner, pretending not to have heard the whole exchange. That evening, Daniel found her sitting on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Heard you had a visitor, he said, settling beside her. News travels fast. It's a small town. Someone always sees something. Daniel was quiet for a moment. You okay? I don't know. Rachel pulled her knees up to her chest. She said things that were true. I did think about you during my marriage. I did run from anything that might remind me of you. And people are talking, probably saying exactly what Linda said. Do you care what they say? Rachel thought about it. Yes, but not enough to give you up. Does that make me selfish? It makes you human. Daniel reached over, took her hand. Rachel, people are going to judge no matter what we do. We could wait a year, 2 years, and someone would still say it's too soon. Someone would still question your motives. You can't live your life for other people's approval. I know. It's just hard. I know it is, he squeezed her hand. But here's what I think. Thomas is gone. That's a tragedy, and I'm genuinely sorry about it. But you're alive. I'm alive, and we've already lost 20 years. How many more are we supposed to waste because someone might disapprove? Rachel leaned against his shoulder. When did you get so wise? When I spent 2 decades learning that life's too short for regrets? Daniel pressed a kiss to the top of her head. But I need you to be sure about this. Really sure. Because once we commit to this, to us, I'm not hiding. I'm not sneaking around. I want the whole world to know you're mine. Yours. Rachel smiled slightly. Possessive. Only when it comes to you. He tilted her face up to look at him. So, are you sure? Rachel thought about Thomas's grave. About Linda's angry words. About the town gossip and the judgment and all the practical reasons to wait. Then she thought about Daniel's hand in hers. About waking up in this house that felt more like home than anywhere she'd ever lived. About second chances and brave choices and finally being honest about what she wanted, I'm sure, she said. I love you, Daniel Cooper. And I don't care who knows it. Daniel's smile could have lit up the whole Montana sky. Good, because I love you too. And I'm done being patient. He kissed her as the sun set behind them, and Rachel felt something inside her settle into place. This was right. Messy and complicated and judged by others, but right. Inside, Charlie called out, Are you two done being dramatic out there? Dinner's getting cold. They pulled apart, laughing. Rachel's mother appeared at the door. Oh good, you kissed him. I was wondering how long that would take. Now come eat before Charlie complains more. As they walked inside together, hand in hand, Rachel realized something. She'd spent 12 years building a life that looked right on the outside. Now she was building one that felt right on the inside. And all the judgment in the world couldn't take that away. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Rachel found Daniel in the barn checking on the horses. He looked up when she entered, surprise and pleasure crossing his face. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked. "Didn't want to." Rachel moved closer. "I kept thinking about what you said. About being done, being patient." "Rachel, no, listen." She took a breath. "I know we said you'd ask properly when the time was right. But maybe the time is right now. Maybe it's been right since the day I moved in. Maybe we've wasted enough time." Daniel set down the brush he'd been using. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying ask me. Right here, right now. Ask me the question you've been waiting 20 years to ask." He studied her face, looking for doubt. But Rachel knew he wouldn't find any. She'd made her choice, finally, completely, without reservation. Daniel took both her hands in his. "Rachel, I've loved you since we were kids. I loved you when you left. I loved you when you came back. I'll love you until my last breath. Will you marry me? Will you finally actually really marry me?" "Yes." Rachel laughed through happy tears. "Yes, yes, yes. 1,000 times yes?" Daniel picked her up and spun her around, both of them laughing like teenagers. When he set her down, he kissed her properly, deeply, with 20 years of longing behind it. "We're doing this," he said against her lips. "We're really doing this. We're really doing this." Rachel pulled back to look at him. "No long engagement. No big wedding. Just us making it official as soon as possible." "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything in my life." Rachel cupped his face in her hands. "I'm done being afraid. I'm done wasting time. I want to be your wife, Daniel. I want to build a life with you, starting right now." And there, in the barn under the Montana stars, they started planning their future. Together. Finally. 3 months later, Rachel stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom, adjusting the simple cream dress she'd chosen for the wedding. Nothing fancy, just a knee-length sundress with lace sleeves that her mother had helped her pick out. Her hair was down, loose waves that the summer breeze would catch. No veil, no elaborate makeup. Just her, exactly as she was. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Margaret appeared in the doorway, clearer-eyed than she'd been in months. The stability of the ranch, the routine, and the happiness had given her more good days. Today was one of them, and Rachel was grateful. "Daniel is a lucky man. I'm the lucky one, Mom." Rachel turned to hug her mother. "Thank you for always seeing what I couldn't." "That's what mothers do." Margaret patted her cheek. "Now come on. Everyone's waiting." They'd decided on a small ceremony in the ranch's backyard. Just close friends and family. Charlie had insisted on getting dressed up, though he was still using a cane. He'd recovered remarkably well from the second stroke, stubborn as ever about his physical therapy. As Rachel walked out onto the back porch, she saw what Daniel and the ranch hands had created. String lights hung between the trees, even though it was still afternoon. Chairs arranged in neat rows. Wildflowers everywhere, the kind that grew naturally in the Montana fields. It was simple and perfect and exactly what she wanted. And there, at the makeshift altar under an old oak tree, stood Daniel. He'd traded his usual work clothes for dark jeans and a white button-down shirt. His hat was off, his hair slightly mussed by the wind. When he saw her, his whole face lit up. Rachel walked down the grass aisle, her mother on one arm. No wedding march, just the sound of birds and the rustle of leaves. She passed familiar faces, ranch hands who'd become friends, teachers from her school, a few townspeople who'd supported them despite the gossip. Linda wasn't there, but Rachel had made peace with that. Some bridges took longer to rebuild. When she reached Daniel, he took her hand. His grip was warm and steady, anchoring her in the moment. "Hi," he whispered, and she could see tears shining in his eyes. "Hi," she whispered back. The pastor, an old family friend of the Coopers, kept the ceremony short and sweet. They'd written their own vows, and when it was Daniel's turn, he pulled out a folded piece of paper from his pocket. "Rachel," he started, then stopped, emotion catching his voice. He took a breath and continued. 20 years ago, I asked you to marry me. You said no, and it broke my heart. But now I understand that we both needed those years. We needed to grow, to make mistakes, to become the people we are today. You needed to learn what you really wanted, And I needed to learn that sometimes the best things are worth waiting for. He folded the paper back up without reading it. I had this whole thing written out, but standing here looking at you, all I can think is that I get to spend the rest of my life with you. That's all I ever wanted. That's all I'll ever need. I promise to love you on the hard days, to support your dreams, to never hide from you or let you hide from yourself. And I promise that when you wake up every morning, the first thing you'll see is someone who thinks you're the best thing that ever happened to him. Rachel was crying now, happy tears streaming down her face. When it was her turn, she didn't trust herself to speak from memory. Daniel, I spent so many years being afraid of taking risks, afraid of what people would think, afraid of my own feelings. You taught me that being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing it anyway. You waited for me when you had every reason to move on. You helped me when I was too proud to ask. You loved me even when I didn't love myself enough to choose what I really wanted. She squeezed his hands. I can't promise I'll be perfect. I can't promise I won't make mistakes. But I can promise that I'm done running. I'm done being afraid. And I'm done wasting time. I choose you, Daniel Cooper. Today, tomorrow, and every day after. I choose you, the pastor smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Daniel, you may kiss your bride. Daniel didn't wait for permission. He pulled Rachel close and kissed her like they were the only two people in the world. The small crowd cheered and applauded. Charlie whistled loudly. Margaret dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. When they finally pulled apart, Daniel rested his forehead against hers. Mrs. Cooper, he said, testing the name. That sounds pretty good, Rachel admitted. Pack your things, he whispered, echoing words from weeks before. You're mine now, Rachel laughed. I was already yours. The ceremony was just making it official. The reception was held right there in the backyard, tables laden with food that friends had brought. A cake from the local bakery, simple but delicious. Someone had brought a guitar, and music filled the air as the sun started its slow descent toward the horizon. Rachel danced with Daniel on the grass, swaying to a song she didn't know the name of but would remember forever. Over his shoulder, she could see Charlie teaching her mother to dance, both of them laughing. She saw a ranch hand sneaking second pieces of cake. She saw the golden light painting everything beautiful. What are you thinking? Daniel asked, pulling back to look at her. That this is what happiness feels like. Real happiness, not the fake kind I pretended to have for so many years. Rachel touched his face. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for coming back. As the party continued around them, Daniel led her away from the crowd toward the old barn where they'd shared their first kiss a lifetime ago. Inside it was cool and quiet, smelling of hay and leather and horses. I have something for you, Daniel said. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. I know we already did rings at the ceremony, but this is different. Inside the box was a delicate silver necklace with a small pendant. Rachel lifted it out, saw that the pendant was engraved with coordinates. That's the exact spot where we're standing right now, Daniel explained. Where we had our first kiss. Where I first told you I loved you. Where we decided to try again. He took the necklace and fastened it around her neck. So you never forget where we started. Rachel touched the pendant, feeling the engraving under her fingers. Daniel, this is perfect. You're perfect, he kissed her softly. And you're finally mine. Finally yours, she agreed. Only took us 20 years. They stayed in the barn for a while, just holding each other, listening to the distant sounds of the party. Eventually, Charlie came looking for them. You two planning on coming back to your own wedding reception? He called from the doorway. People want to toast the bride and groom. Coming, Dad, Daniel called back, but he didn't let go of Rachel right away. Ready to face them all as my wife? More than ready. They walked back to the party hand in hand. As the evening wore on, people gave speeches. Funny stories about Daniel growing up on the ranch. Sweet memories of Rachel when she first moved to town. Charlie stood up, leaning on his cane, and the crowd quieted. Most of you know these two have a history, he started. And there were knowing chuckles. 20 years ago, I watched my son's heart break when this girl chose someone else. I won't lie, I was angry about it. Thought she'd made a terrible mistake. He looked at Rachel. But looking at you both now, I think everything happened exactly as it was supposed to. You both needed those years apart to become the people you are today. And now you're together and you appreciate it more because you know what it's like to not have it. He raised his glass. To Daniel and Rachel, may you have 50 more years of making each other happy. And may you never waste another day taking each other for granted. To Daniel and Rachel, everyone chorused. As the stars came out and the string lights glowed brighter, Rachel found herself standing at the edge of the gathering, just watching. Her husband was talking to ranch hands, laughing at something one of them said. Her mother was dozing in a comfortable chair, a smile on her face. Charlie was holding court with the older guests, probably telling embarrassing stories about Daniel. This was her life now. Messy and imperfect and absolutely perfect all at once. Mrs. Cooper? A voice made her turn. It was Elena, one of the teachers from her school. I just wanted to say I'm happy for you, and I'm sorry if I ever contributed to the gossip. Thank you, Rachel said, genuinely touched. I was married to the wrong person once too. Elena continued quietly. Wasted 10 years before I had the courage to leave. Watching you choose happiness even when people judged you for it, that meant something to me. It gave me courage to make my own changes. After Elena walked away, Rachel realized that maybe her story mattered. Maybe by being brave enough to choose love, even when it was complicated and messy, she'd given someone else permission to do the same. Daniel found her then, sliding an arm around her waist. What's that smile about? Just thinking about how life works out sometimes. How the path we take isn't always straight, but it gets us where we need to be eventually. Deep thoughts for a wedding night. We're not kids anymore, Daniel. We're allowed to be deep, he laughed and kissed her temple. True, but we're also allowed to be happy. To just enjoy this moment without overthinking it. I'm working on that. As the party wound down and guests started leaving, calling out congratulations and well wishes, Daniel took Rachel's hand. Come with me. I want to show you something. He led her away from the house out toward the fields. They walked in comfortable silence.